Coming. We're going to get started here. And I'd like to introduce my son-in-law, Joshua Davidson. He's going to officiate the events here today. So come on up, Joshua. Thank you.
All right. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. All right. Thanks for being here. This has kind of been a little bit of a long time coming. So it's good to see some familiar faces, some new faces, some faces that look like faces I know, which is pretty cool. So it's cool to see a lot of different family here. I know it's cliche to say, but I know Billie would really love that you're all here. I think it's going to be a great time for us just to think about her, to remember her. So why don't we go ahead and start with the prayer, if you guys are okay with that, and bow your heads with me. God, we want to thank you for today, and we thank you for Billie. I know that when you made her, you knew her before anybody else. You saw those mischievous eyes, and you probably smiled, and you saw how witty she was going to be, and I'm sure you laughed. You knew what kind of mother she was going to be. You knew what kind of grandmother she was going to be, what kind of wife she was going to be. And Lord, we know you're proud of her, and we're so glad to be here together today to talk about her, to celebrate her, to remember her. We thank you for Billie. We thank you for your son, Jesus. In his name we pray. Amen. Amen. We're going to start today by reading the 23rd Psalm. Because the Lord is my shepherd, I have everything I need. He lets me rest in the meadow grass and leads me beside the quiet streams. He gives me new strength. He helps me do what honors him the most. Even when walking through the dark valley of death, I will not be afraid, for you are close beside me, guarding, guiding all the way. You provide delicious food for me in the presence of my enemies. You have welcomed me as your guest. Blessings overflow. Your goodness and unfailing kindness shall be with me all of my life. And afterwards, I will live with you forever in your home. Now we're going to listen to a hymn. It's a very popular hymn. It's called In the Garden, but we wanted to put a Billie twist on it. So of course, we're going to listen to Johnny Cash sing us In the Garden.
Alone, while the dew is still on the roses, and the voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God discloses, and he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. He speaks, and the sound of his voice is so sweet, the birds hush their singing, and the melody that he gave to me within my heart is ringing. And he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. I'll stay in the garden with him talks with me, and he tells me I am his own. And the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known.
And now we'll read a poem called Remember Me. To the living, I am gone. To the sorrowful, I will never return. To the angry, I was cheated. But to the happy, I am at peace. And to the faithful, I have never left. I cannot speak, but I can listen. I cannot be seen, but I can be heard. So as you stand upon a shore, gazing at a beautiful scene, as you look upon a flower and admire its simplicity, remember me. Remember me in your heart, your thoughts and your memories of the times we loved, the times we cried, the times we fought, the times we laughed. For if you always think of me, I will never have gone. It's a quote from Helen Keller: what we once enjoyed and deeply loved, we can never lose. For all that we love deeply becomes part of us. We're here to remember Billie. And I think the greatest thing about memorials is people getting a chance to share stories about the person we're remembering. And everybody has a Billie story. You've got to. You cannot know Billie. You can't live 2 houses down from Billie without having a story about Billie. And I want to encourage you, as we're about to open things up here, you may not be somebody who likes to talk in front of people. It may be like way outside of your comfort zone. My father loves to speak. He always says his idea of heaven is one day we'll have all the time in the world to tell our stories. That's what heaven's going to be about. My mother says that's what hell is going to be about. So I understand whatever side you're from. This is the time, though, that we're coming together as family and as friends to remember Billie. So I want to encourage you. I want to push you a little bit. Come on up here when we open this up and give some words about Billie. It could just be a time that she helped you, a time she made you laugh. I'm going to start us off because I have my own story, one of many. But when I first started dating Max's daughter, Lauren, we would go over to Billie and Stu's house. And I was like a fish out of water, I was a new guy. But one night, and this might have been after 1 or 2 silver bullets, I don't know. But Stu, Billie, and I don't know how this happened. It's the most random thing ever. We were sitting there in the living room and we started talking about how Roy Orbison is the most underrated singer-songwriter of all time. Like, Stu is very passionate about it. I became very passionate. Billie made fun of us a little bit. But we just talked, and it felt like forever. We just talked all about our favorite Roy Orbison songs. I mean, it's the most random thing, but I remember feeling like so accepted, and I just felt really comfortable. I felt really good. Stu passed away not a long time after that. And I couldn't go to his funeral, and I really regretted not being able to go. And I was new at a job, and I just couldn't get there. But afterwards, we all went back to Stu and Billie's house, and she took me aside, and she brought up this CD. And she was like, I don't know if you remember, we were talking about Roy Orbison. That same night after you guys left, Stu got on the computer and he burned this mixed CD for you. And he wanted you to have this. What a special thing. Billie was a family historian. She knew all the quirkiest, weirdest stories about like cousin this or uncle this. And you're like, that guy wrestled a jaguar? I don't know. Like, there were all these great stories that she would give us. And she had a way of making you feel special, accepted, and a part of the family. And I really love her for that. And I love the legacy that she's left. You can see it in Barry and Max. I think that she was a very special lady, and I'm so glad that I had a chance to know her. And I'm sure there's a lot of you here who feel the same way. So I don't want you to be shy. I want to invite you now. We've got folks that are here with us online.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear me, Max?
Yep.
Okay, great. First of all, I'd like to offer my condolences to the family. Billie was super special, as was your father, Stu, and actually quite meant a lot to me. But you know, it's an interesting relationship I have with your family. I wouldn't have become the engineer that I did without your father, and I wouldn't be alive today without your mother, which is an interesting story. Maybe some of you have heard, but I really got to know Stu and Billie really well in 1983 and 84 when we all were posted to Britain for an assignment on a European space program. And, you know, I was
Hey, Chris.
26 single and really not knowing anybody over there. And Billie was just like me. She would have me for home cook, Wyoming kind of meal, potatoes, which are to this
Come on.
etc. But one of the enduring memories of Billie was, you know, as a Californian, not used to British driving on the other side of the road, of course, you know, I just wasn't looking both ways when I crossed the road. And, you know, Billie, being the mom that she was, instinctively saved my life one day when I was about to step off the curb in front of a big, I'm not even sure, remember what it was. It might have been a London cab. And she grabbed me and pulled me by the collar, probably like she did her sons at times, back onto the curb. And this big black object swept by us at a high rate of speed. I would have been dead meat without her. So, you know, right then and there, you know, that would have been it, bought by a London cab. And yet there she was for me, keeping me alive and in so many ways, not only feeding me, but keeping me from running into cars and things like that. And, you know, honestly, that I'd never, for me, the two of them were such a great role model in how to respect one another, you know, basically how to love one another. They were so much in love and loved the experiences they had together. We just had so much fun in touring and sharing, you know, a foreign country. And Billie especially, and Stu also, had such a fascination for life, you know, wanted to know the whys of everything. And I think that's certainly one thing that Stu taught me in my career was, you know, to ask why a jillion times until you get to the bottom of something. And Billie was very much the same way. So really, you know, I saw some pictures in your show today, which really loved because it was about that period where we spent a lot of time together. Billie in her green raincoat and those, I'm not sure if they were tortoiseshell glasses, but, you know, whatever those glasses were, and that wry little smile that she always had, that knowing smile that, you know, just, you know, she knew exactly what was going on at all times, which, you know, I felt sorry for you, Max and Barry, because of that, because she always knew what was going on and, and was generally a step ahead. So just in closing, just a wonderful, wonderful person. And I'm sorry to see her gone. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Do we?
I'm a teacher. I have the art school over in Lomita. And no, I think I can project. Can you hear me?
No, it's
okay?
okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, okay.
There you go.
Okay, I brought you here today. No, it was, okay, let me tell you about myself. I teach art, but I also have this tattoo on my forehead that says, give me all your strays, give me your rescue animals. Well, Billie walked into the school one time So she was looking for art classes. So, and I think it was after Stu passed away, and I think you all were trying to encourage her to take some art or get out, socialize, and so on. So she did ask me, David, do you take beginners? I said, oh, certainly we take beginners. No, I mean beginners. I said, yes, we will take beginners in art. But then she said, no. Or I said, no, we don't take beginners. And she has this laugh that you know, right? If you ever know it. And she was always kind of defeatist. You know, I said, you should take confidence building 101 in art first, and then come back and see me. But she was doing really improved, and she was enjoying it. She made fun of herself all the time. She was a very strong person, absolutely. And oh my gosh, if she was my mother, I don't know how you Scott. And I only knew her for 100 years in Summer Studios. But to keep this short, you know, I had this long list of things that I was going to say about it, but I'll put that away. Sure. But she is a strong person, was a strong person, and in the spirit of things, she is a strong person that we'll always remember. But one day she called me over. She was working on her artwork and said, David, I made a mistake. I go, oh my gosh, you made a mistake? And I walk over there. Yeah, I actually like what I did. So, God bless her.
Thank you.
All right, so Billie's best friend, Rachel, couldn't be here. So she asked us to read something for her. Can you all hear me without this? Here you go, bud.
No, it's for the, I know no one wants to do it, but you got to do it.
My name is Rachel, and I would like to share a few things about my dear friend Billie. There is not enough words to express how very lucky I was to have such a dear, funny, strong, and very loyal friend for close to 50 years. Our adventures started when we lived in the same neighborhood while our kids were growing up. It was because of her encouragement that I was able to get a nursing degree, which I will be forever thankful for. That's just the kind of friendship we had. We were there to encourage each other, help with the ups and downs of life, and also share lots of good laughs whenever we could. Once I moved to Tucson, we managed to still be best friends. I went on some camping trips with her and Stuart, which were amazing. Every camping site, Billie always managed to make friends because of her great storytelling abilities. My family always loved to hear her stories about her travels and who she met while she was on her trips. Our love for reading was something else that kept us close as well. We would mail each other books to make sure that each of us had enough to read. When both of our spouses were no longer with us, we decided to do some traveling of our own. We had the best time traveling, finding new bookstores, getting lost in cities, and finding our way back to our hotels was the best part. Billie would get a little stressed out, but we managed to make the best of the situation. And as always, Billie would make a friend along the way. We had planned to take a cruise to Mexican Riviera in March of 2020. But due to her diagnosis and COVID, we were unable to take that trip. So in her honor, I will be taking the trip, and I know she would be there in spirit. She would never miss an opportunity to take a cruise. She did love going on her cruises. So her loyalty to me was endless.
Somebody from Boston would say she was wicked smart. And I think about the 60s and the 70s and what was going on. And I'm just very thankful that she decided to stay around the Army. That's it. I loved her.
She, my mom was always very politically active, and she campaigned for all the Democratic candidates for Senate and for president. And what Barry's talking about is that there were two paths for my mom. One of them was to go off and join the bra burners in San Francisco and help lead the revolution. And the other one was to be a wife and a mother. We're both eternally grateful she chose that path. Would anybody else in the room like to come up? Brenda? This is one of my mom's longtime neighbors. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Good afternoon. My name is Brenda Guy, and we live next door to Billie and Stu from 1984 to current day, because now our niece and her husband bought my mom's house after she passed away. So I just want to talk about the Kimble family as a whole, and Billie being really the heart of the home. When we moved there, I just turned 15 and met Max and Barry. And one of the things that I just shared with Barry today is that he helped me get to school on time, because he would always start up his loud, I have some other words, but his truck every morning to make sure that I could get to school on time. So I just, thought about how much then I didn't appreciate it, but today I really appreciate that help. And also, my husband was getting out of the Navy in '91. And Stu helped my husband with his first ever resume. So either I'm happy that he's done so well, or not so happy that he could have done better. I don't know. But that was at least the start. And not long after that, I think it was around late 90s, that the house on the other side of Billie and Stu went up for sale, and my brother bought that one. So she was surrounded by us. So I have a lot of stories about Billie, and now that I have to bring them all out, they're a little bit scattered. So please just bear with me for a little bit. So I would see Billie and Stu in their garage quite often. So you couldn't walk from my mother's house to my brother's house without visiting. So we had lots of talks, lots of great opportunities. There was in our neighborhood, when someone got a new garage door, everybody got a new garage door. So I remember really getting close to Stu when they went through and did all the brickwork in the driveways. So my mom was getting her driveway redone, and Stu and Billie was getting their driveway done. But it was different for Billie and Stu because it was more technical with them than the design. So Stu would kind of go through the steps of the rebar, the bricks, and how he wanted this to not be sloped. And he would, we would get an opportunity to talk about his design and how it was wider for maybe like a 3-car instead of a 2. So that was all really great stuff, because I'm into that, actually. I'm into home improvement and home design. So that's how I'm saying that we connected on a different level. So, but my mom and Billie, I think, really became great neighbor friends or friend neighbors, whatever title you want to give it, when they were away on vacation and the water pipe broke in their house. And my mom saw water coming from the garage. And so she notified Billie, hey, there's a problem. And from that day forward, Billie had always told me how she was always forever grateful for that, because that water, it caused a lot of damage, but it could have been worse. But I think that's the day that we really, truly fell in love with our neighbors and fell in love with the Kimble family. And I remember having numerous conversations with Billie about Callah and Joel and how they were growing, and just keeping up with them through her. So she had lots of stories. It's very witty. And she told me, when I told her, you know, Billie, her husband and I were buying a house around the corner. She told me, okay, you gotta get a bear skin rug. So I said, oh, wow. Okay, I'm gonna have to look into that. And now, as I started thinking, I think about Barry and Max, were they rolling around on your bearskin rug? What's happening on that bearskin rug? So, but I think that's just another side of Billie, how she was humorous, witty. We shared a lot of laughs in her garage, and I think I appreciated her even more after she had a cocktail, because that was the great Billie. My husband told me not to talk, but I couldn't resist. But it's, you know, I do miss my mom, and I do miss Billie being there. When I would go and see my mom, I can always see Billie. And to have that dynamic change is bittersweet, because now I know they're in a better place. And they're probably together talking about the kids. One more thing, last thing. A compliment that I got from Billie, I think about quite often. Stopped me one day and she said, Brenda, did a great job raising your kids. And you know, words, they do have meaning. And when you have someone as wonderful as Billie to be your neighbor and your friend, and she gives you that type of compliment, it means. So I brought my husband up here because he wanted me to remember a story. So I said, no, you have to tell it.
You know, I hurt my back and I didn't want to come over this morning. So I had to come up with mutual support. But everything she said was great. There's a lot of fun memories. I moved in with my wife and her mother in 91 when we got married, and got to know Stu and Billie, and meet Barry and Max, and Barry and I were just sharing some stories about the Navy, because I spent 30 years in the Navy. Although I got out in 91, I immediately went into the reserves. So I spent 30 years in the reserves and been 2.5 years retired now. So a lot of great memories. With the holidays coming up, what I remember about Billie is bringing over
Tiger bark.
Yes. And you couldn't miss it. I mean, you look
Yes.
forward to Christmas already, but to
Yeah.
get Christmas and to get Billie's tiger bark.
Yes.
And I reminded my wife as she was coming up, hey, say something about the tiger bark. So, but there's a lot of memories of Billie, and it was just great neighbors. I mean, looking out for one another. You know, her mother who was getting, ill, and Billie would look out for her and let us know what was going on and help her. It was just such a mutual thing and helping each other. And that's what neighbors are. That's what neighbors do. And so we're just blessed to have known or met Billie and have you guys in our lives. And we miss her dearly. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is MaryJo Kimble.
See, she's already doing it.
My name is MaryJo Kimble. I'm the youngest of the Kimbles. So I really didn't know my older brother in Billie a whole lot because he was 20 years older than me. So just have some really cute stories to tell. And if I can make it to this here, Billie didn't really like going to the mountain. And so when we did ever get her to go to the mountain, it was just, we were always just glad to have her there. But the last time we took her to the mountain, she wrote Barry because she said she wouldn't go up, but nobody else but Barry, because Barry could do it. She'll go with Barry. So we get to this place called Coffin Park, and half of this room probably doesn't know anywhere about that, but it's really a rocky place up the mountain. And so we go in, and it's a big, nasty road all the way in there. We're four-wheeling it in, and I go into this mud puddle, and I come back out the other side, and Barry goes into the mud puddle and has a flat. And I thought, do you remember that, Barry? Oh, yeah. I thought Billie was just going to walk up the mountain immediately because she was so upset about the whole situation. And we finally got her to camp. It just really didn't happen to be one of our better camp.
Camp cussing the whole way.
Pardon me?
Cussing the whole way.
Yeah. Yeah. Nasty words. But and we had a really, really nice time that night. We didn't have the really bestest camping time that time because we drank a lot.
No, the microphone.
We drank a lot.
but yes, we did drink a lot.
Then our party got really, really sick and had to be parked right next to the outhouses because that's how further that they could get for the grew up. And there was just a lot of drinking going on, partying, having a good time. But I'm telling you, that is one hell of a woman. She taught me some life lessons that nobody taught me because I was the last of 7 kids and just kind of got bumped through. And Billie would grab me every once in a while and tell me, look, and anybody else would have tried to tell me that, I would have got mad and been angry because they were telling me what, I was doing something wrong. But I heard Billie, and she talked to me, I heard her. And whenever she was around, she was a funniest woman to be around. She just laughed just a little bit. She'd have the whole room laughing. And she's pretty quick with her things. Like sometimes I didn't catch on. But then when I did, it was really fun. But that's really all I guess. And then the two of them, they raised 2 wonderful children. And I spent more time with Barry than I did with Max because Barry was more my age and we four-wheeled and drank a lot together. And I tell you, they're just great kids, wonderful women. And of course, I love my brother dearly, so that's it.
Okay, I'm Callah Kimble. Stuart, there's my brother, an employee of her death. MaryJo unfortunately left that part of the story. And I've been knowing Max and Barry since they were, I helped drive you all back from Simi Valley to somewhere. But so Billie was really definitely afraid of the mountains and the curves, all that. And there's a lot of some nasty places, like MaryJo said. And so we were going up, and we had some adult beverages and stuff going through some of those areas. And MaryJo said that Barry had a flat tire. That wasn't quite it. That was almost. He hit this mud puddle so hard, there was a step rock on the other side, and he broke the front end of that truck. And guess what happened? The sleeping bag was going pooping out the back window at the same time. And Billie was back there just moaning and groaning and throwing it all up. But she was a lot of fun. And then that same trip, I believe it was the same trip in Coffee Park, Laura, maybe you remember this. We it was a kind of a lousy
camping trip day. It was raining and cold. And a bunch of us decided we just couldn't stand each other any longer. So we decided to hike up the mountain, up the trail towards Geneva. And Billie and Stuart decided to stay home. And when we got back from hiking, all of our stuff, we had 2 Suburbans, all of it was Suburbans. They had completely tore down the camp, put one of my boots in that truck, one of my boots in the other truck. And Billie just couldn't wait to get out of there.
I didn't talk to my parents for a year
We couldn't get Billie up there for the mountains at all.
I think that was the last trip.
Last time, yeah. Or do you want to add anything at all? Okay. We're camping people, and that's where a lot of my stories, Billie and Stuart, come about. Thanks.
Thank you, Tommy. Victor, are you ready?
Sure. Hello, everybody. My name's Victor. I'm Stuart and Billie's other son. I've known the boys probably since I was about 7 years old, and spent a lot of time over there. And you're right, Chris, she did know everything that we did. I think she kept a lot of it from my parents, only to keep the peace, because between the 3 of us, we did get into a lot of stuff. And I know we probably put both of our moms through a lot of anguish as we all grew up together. Have very fond memories of growing up in that neighborhood. She was the best. She was definitely my other mom and will be missed. I could sit here and tell you stories that you probably would never believe, the things that we did. Hopefully a lot of them are statute of limitations are gone. You know, how we never got caught is beyond me, but one thing she always did say, because Barry was always the brunt of our jokes, was that someday he's going to be bigger than you guys. And she wasn't wrong. I'm surprised he didn't come looking for me. Once he got out of the service, when I did see him, I was like beside myself and was super nice to him. But we had a lot of fun, and she will dearly be missed, but I know she's watching over us. That's it.
Thank you, Victor. Anybody else in the room?
I'll say something.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that you drink.
This doesn't mean drinking. So my name is Greg Clark. Billie was my aunt, and there's a couple of things I remember with Billie. So I was a young guy, and when we moved in, Billie and Stuart, Max and Barry took my mom and her 4 kids into their home. We needed a place to stay for a few months, so I will be forever grateful for them doing that. I was a little guy at the time. Took many years to kind of mature and understand how big of an undertaking that was for their family, but I'm sure Billie had a lot to do with that. Barry did too, and hit me with a rock. But my mom stayed possessed. So those were times I remember spending with Billie, and there's a couple of things that came out of that. But one of the things I think that I remember the most, when you're a kid, you have these kind of random memories as you grow as an adult. And one of the random memories I have was walking with Billie along the street. And I don't recall why, but I was very concerned about hell and the devil. So I probably had watched some scare movie or something. But I remember her putting her hand on my shoulder. And I don't know if she believed this, but she put her hand on my shoulder and she said, "Greg, you don't have to worry about it. The devil is something that humans make up in their minds to scare themselves. That's not something you have to worry about." And I thought, oh, God, I feel a lot better. So I remember that. The other memory I think I have was there's a place called 80 Acres. I've only been there once.
Oh, God.
I've only been there once. At the time I was there, I took my kid, my son, who was probably maybe 3 or 4 years old at the time. And I'm a new dad, and it's my first child. And really kind of all over it, right? Making sure I'm doing everything right. And he wanted to go to bed, and so I went to bed early. And I woke up the next morning and Billie pulled me aside. And I'll never forget, she pulled me aside and then she kind of lauded me and praised me for being a dad, a great dad, is what she called it. She said, you're a great dad, and you're going to be a great dad. I can tell already. And I think that encouragement was something special for me that I will always remember her for. Try to be a great dad since. The only other thing I wanted to say was about Billie getting out of the car and walking on these windy roads. So one memory I have, it was not in Wyoming, but it was somewhere in California, and we went like hunting for rocks in the desert somewhere. And there was this big mountain, and I remember we would stop and Billie would get out of the car, and then we would drive up and she would walk along these curves in the same way coming down the mountain. I said, oh my God, she's getting out, she's gonna walk this whole mountain. And she did, she walked a good part of it. But I've heard people call her strong, and she absolutely was strong in a lot of different ways. But thank you for bringing our family in. I'm sure your mom's a big part of that. And love all you guys, and we'll miss her.
Thank you, Greg. Anybody else in the room? This is my son Popeye. All right, Joel, here you go. Show everybody those arms first.
What's that? Yeah, so Billie was my grandma, obviously, and I can't remember, like, probably the first memory I had. Callah and her were in the kitchen, and I was on like a computer chair spinning around in the living room, and she like, you know, she was like, "Hey, stop spinning around there, you're gonna fall off," whatever. And I remember thinking like, I can get away with this and keep going. She snapped at me so hard, and I was, like you said, you couldn't get away with anything. She knew everything that was going on. That's one of my first memories. But I think the thing I'll remember most is like she was so smart, and she had, her memory was like so on it. And I would always talk to her at the dinner table when I lived with her. I'd be telling stories about my friends, and I wouldn't say their names because I would think, you know, how is she going to remember Drew's name? I only brought him up one time. She's like, "Wait, who are you talking about?" I'm like, "Oh, Drew, you don't know. No, Drew's the one that got married to Kelsey, and that was the wedding in the desert, and that was the, you know, that was kind of cloudy, so it was probably sometime around June, maybe early May." I'm like, how could you possibly remember? But you know, I had so many stories, and all my friends can tell you, you know, all the funny things that I would go back and tell them. All my friends have, you know, little catchphrases that I picked up from her and said around then, most of which I won't say in front of you. You know, it was really cool when I was living with her, and I was in I played pool a lot. I was in a pool league, and for whatever reason, we all started doing like dinner before we went to meet up at the league. So all the team would meet up, and I asked my grandma, I was like, "Hey, would you want to have, you know, 4 other guys over?" And you know, we just raid your kitchen. And she loved it. She just made us food every week, and the guys would come over and they'd sit around and just listen to her stories, and you know, all of her wildness. And of course, she already knew everything about them by the time they got there. And I remember it was the last night of league is like a banquet night where it's a big party and a potluck and all that at the pool hall. And I asked her, you know, would you want to go? And I thought she was going to say no. She doesn't like going anywhere, but she actually did go. And I told her, well, you know, they only serve beer. You know, there's no whiskey, there's no wine. And she was like, "Oh, you know, I hate beer, but I think I can make do." And we get to the bar. She sits right at the front, and my buddy is working there. He's one of the guys that would come over for dinner. And she's like, "Oh, Billie, what do you want?" And she asked for just a glass of warm water. So he brings her a pint glass of warm water, and you know, everything's going on. And we look over, and now this glass of water looks like a beer. I'm like, when did you start drinking?
That's water was like here.
She's like, oh no, she pulls out, she had a little whiskey bottle. The whiskey in the beer, and then, you know, the bartender, he's like, oh man, like, can't do that. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of fun stories, and everybody that I told when she got sick and then when she passed away, all my friends were so bummed out. People that never even met her were just knew what an awesome woman she was. But yeah, love you, Grandma. Miss you.
Callah?
Hi, I'm Callah. I'm Max's daughter, Billie's granddaughter. She was a great woman. I have lots of fun stories about her. They're kind of random and all over the place, but I really appreciate growing up with such an active grandma. She was always on the floor playing with us. She always encouraged us to use our imagination and read a lot. And when I was a teenager, we moved to Belgium for Dad's job. She came over with us, and at the time I was really upset about being displaced for my junior year of high school. And I really didn't want to be in another country. And she came over, and all I wanted to do was find some American television. And I finally found The Simpsons, and it was dubbed, and I was like, this is my jam. I'm just gonna sit right here, watch some American television. She really didn't like that. So she came over and snatched the remote, turned the TV off. And at the time, Dad was working like 12-hour days. So it was just Joe and I. And she said, you know, read a book. And I was like, I don't want to read a book. And she said, well, you know what you can do? And she gave me a notebook and she said, let's start with the letter S. You can write every word you can think of that starts with the letter S. And I was like 15. And so those years were rough for us. But looking back, I'm very grateful for her, you know, taking us all around, taking an initiative, showing us the train routes and all of that. And then as I got older, we got a lot closer. I mean, of course, as a child, I was over at the house all the time. I think she always talks about how much she hates teenage girls. And so when I was a teenage girl, we weren't the best friends. But as I grew older, we had a lot of great memories and great stories. Specifically, one time I was at her house. I was staying there, came back to stay with her for a while. I was back from New York, and I walked in the kitchen and the door was shut. You know, it's like a kitchen that has a door. And I walked in and it was really hot in there. And she had the oven at 500 and she had the oven door down. And she was sitting at the kitchen table with a robe on, a beanie on, a scarf on. And I said, Grandma, what, are you cooking something? And she was like, I'm cold. I said, Grandma, that is not like a thing that you should be doing. Safety first. I put on the heater. She said, nah, I'm just gonna, I'm just in this room. I don't need to waste that money heating the whole house. I'm just gonna, you know, the oven works just as good. And so that was one of my favorite memories with her. Another time I came back from New York and I was staying with her. I poured myself a proper glass of wine.
A 5-ounce pour.
5-ounce pour. And I came back to the table and we were at the coffee table, you know, drinking and talking. And I went back to get another glass of wine and she made a comment that we say now all the time. And she said, quit aggravating yourself, Callah. Because I had only poured it, you know, halfway. And she was like, quit aggravating yourself. So I poured it all the way up. Yeah, that was.
Save yourself a trip.
Save yourself a trip. Yeah, I think she had a lot to do, looking back now at her love for travel. I think that's probably why I've bopped around a bunch. And her love of teaching. I think that's probably has a role in why I do what I do today. So she was a great woman. She would always say, if it's not one damn thing, it's another. I'm trying to reframe that in my mind because it's not the best for like positive psychology. But yeah, I love her. I'll miss her. And she was a great grandma to have.
Going once, going twice. Okay. So,
Max,
yes?
can I say something? It's Marcia.
No, that opportunity's gone.
Okay, never
That office
mind.
off the table.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm Billie's younger sister. And I just want to say that Billie was always there for me. I agree with Barry, she was wicked smart. And we talked books, and I still want to call her and tell her about a book I just read. I miss her terribly. She was a lot of fun. And when we were in Washington, D.C. on a tour, she accused me of being even cheaper than her, which I think is impossible. But I love you, Billie, and I miss you. That's it.
Thank you, Marcia. So I'll do my best to get through this. You know, my mom was a great mom. She kept my brother and I alive, despite our best efforts to the contrary. She used to say that the old Bay Harbor Hospital on the Maida Boulevard should have had a Kimble wing for as much money as she spent on doctors. And I know you've heard a lot of people say today that she was always on it and always knew what was going on. And there's one exception to that. So me and Victor and Barry and a lot of the kids in the neighborhood watched too much Hogan's Heroes. So we got it in our
I was wondering if you're going to bring it up.
we got it in our head that what we should do is in the playhouse next to the house, we should cut a hole in the floor and then start digging down underneath the playhouse. And we carved out all of that earth. We pigeon walked to the back wall by the storm drain, and we emptied out our pants just like they did on Hogan's Heroes, so that Colonel Clink would never find out. And we had a couch down there. We had a trunk full of Playboys. We had electricity down there. And my mom never knew anything about it until years afterwards. So we did sneak one by her. And I echo Victor's point. I'm glad the statute of limitations is expired on most of the stuff we did. And I thank the universe every day that there was no Facebook or social media, because I would be in prison. There's no doubt. Many of you know that I was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 4 and had emergency surgery to remove my right kidney in 1966. This was tough on my dad and brother, but especially on my mom. You know, we lived in Simi Valley and we only had one car, and my dad needed it for work. So she counted on the members of the church to get me to UCLA for my chemo and radiation treatments for 6 months after the surgery. She agonized over whether or not I would survive, how to pay for everything, the short and long-term consequences of procedures and treatments I was receiving. And she recently told me, this was just this last spring when we were living with her. She told me that a girl the same age as I was had the same cancer as I had in the same church and had died. And she was completely freaked out. But she was a rock. And I know for sure that I wouldn't be standing here today without her diligence in pestering the doctors and the caregivers to make sure that I had the best outcome possible. She was my advocate. She battled cancer 5 times. So it was me in 1966, her own breast cancer in 97, her mother's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in 2004, my dad's Merkel cell cancer in 2007, and finally esophageal cancer. 5 times more than anyone should have to. She was a brave cancer warrior, and she battled with the best of them, fighting with the doctors to make sure we got the best treatment, making sure that we were all as prepared as we could be for our treatments and the aftermath. Strength when you didn't have anything left, and compassionate all the time. And by the way, fuck cancer. Sorry, I'm not sorry. When my brother joined the Navy at 17, my mom was a mess. She subscribed to 3 different local newspapers so she would know the position of Barry's ship every single day. There's no doubt in my mind that if my brother had gotten laid up in Guam or Dubai, that she would have been on the next plane out of LAX. Any Navy personnel that kept her from her son would rue the day they had crossed Billie Kimble. She was there for me after my divorce. She watched my kids after school so I could work. She didn't let them sit in front of the TV or a tablet and walk away either. You got a little bit of that with Callah's story. Just like she did with her sisters, Marcia and Barbara, she taught school to my kids. They had to read, work on problems, or she made something up for them to do, like every word that starts with S, right? She and my dad loved those afternoons with the kids. And Brenda will tell you, and Tony will tell you, they were out there on the driveway every afternoon. MaryJo talked about this, and Tommy talked about this. My mom and dad helped their younger brothers and sisters when any of them wanted to move out west to California and give it a try. They helped them move, they set up house, they watched kids, they did whatever they could do to help. She flew out to her sister Barbara's in Texas to help her build her house. She volunteered for Habitat for Humanity in her 70s. She gave much more than she took from this world. My mom loved to travel, as many of you know. She researched her destinations in detail and made plans that would help her get the most of her trip. She loved to camp, first in the tent, then in the mini Mirage, and finally in the 5th wheel. And we're not going to talk about the Class A that my dad bought on the whim that she hated with a passion. Barry and I have many fond memories of traveling with my folks. Always great music, like you heard when you were coming in today. Always prepared to make soup or hot coffee on the road as we bombed it up to Wyoming for summer vacations. I learned from these trips, and I use these same tips and tricks when traveling with my kids much later on. She loved to go on trips, soak up American history, like Marcia talked about. Those, as you know, if you ever talked about those trips, some of those in the later years were arranged by Pam at the Auto Club. She was always pimping Pam at the Auto Club. And she loved those where they would take over all the planning and coordination that she had done for so long. Her last cruise was with Rachel around Australia and New Zealand. And someone talked about her making a friend everywhere she went. And I remember she came back from that cruise and she met a Texan on the smoking deck of that cruise. And they would go up there, and smoke. And she got to talking to him. And I had recommended the Marigold movie, where you send the old people to India.
Hotel, yeah.
Yes.
Hotel Marigold.
Yeah.
And I did that because it had Dame Judi Dench and movie stars I thought she would enjoy. Well, she told the Texan about that, and he said, "You better keep your eye on that boy." He was concerned I was going to ship her off to India for her later. She lived in England with my dad while he was on assignment from TRW at British Aerospace. You heard from Chris a little bit a little earlier. He joined them on many weekend trips around Great Britain and Europe, and she still spoke fondly of this time, 35 years later. She encouraged me to take that job in Brussels for 3 years with my own family. And like Callah mentioned, she flew over with Joel and Callah, and she helped set up house, and she went grocery shopping and all that, so I could do those 12-hour days. And we went over to London on the Channel. She was always so excited about travel. It was contagious. You all know my mom was a voracious reader. As a child of another voracious reader and librarian, how could she not be? But it wasn't the sheer volume of books that she read or the speed that she read them. It was her retention that blew us all away. You've heard a couple of people talk about that. She could remember the smallest details about the characters, plots, points, and settings, and you name it. I read the book It, and I was like, yeah, there was a scary clown. That's the limit of my retention, right? And she could remember everything. Her personal library was over 5,000 volumes, and I know that because 4,000 made it back to Texas before. Victor talked about this a little bit, but everyone in the neighborhood came to our house. Everyone. It was the place to be. It was where everyone met after school. We always had a big crew. I still have a sense of pride about that even to this day. There's yet one more thing that I tried to emulate with my kids and their friends. I tried to make sure that all of their friends were welcome at our house. My mom was a den mother in the Cub Scouts for both my brother and I. We had meetings at our house. She arranged activities and outings that helped us get our merit badges. She helped me with my paper route. She typed school papers. She did everything a good mother is supposed to do. She hauled me back and forth to the Torrance Airport once a week when I was in the Civil Air Patrol with Victor. One particular night, and MaryJo will remember this. Victor has been known to tease a person or two once or twice, maybe to the breaking point. And MaryJo was up in the front seat with my mom, and we were driving home right around the intersection of Crenshaw and Lomita. And MaryJo had just about enough of Victor's BS. And she launched over the front seat into the middle seat at the same time Victor launched into the back of the station wagon. And MaryJo followed him right over there and was pounding the snot out of him. And meanwhile, my mom is screaming the whole time, "Don't kill him, he's my best friend's son." And, as you can see, Victor he lived through that. He's doing just fine.
Oh yeah, that just flashed back to me.
My mom always felt bad about stopping her education after she got her AA degree. And I think that I kind of messed that up with my arrival on the scene. So in the 1970s, she went back to earn her BA degree in anthropology at Cal State Dominguez Hills. She loved this subject and even got to spend a summer in Illinois on an archaeological dig and graduated in 1976. This inspired me as well. A lot of you have talked about the inspiration that she provided to you. I got an early start on college, as some of you know, which I completely blew. And I ended up having to do it the hard way after I had a daughter. And I had to go to night school. But, my mom had done it. She had worked. She had gone to school. She had raised the kids. And that gave me the strength to persevere and get through it until I got through. My mom was everything to me. A friend, a confidant, wise counsel, a moral compass, a great role model, and a compassionate ear. She was a hard ass when she needed to be, and a consistent voice in my head, helping me to make the right decisions as I grew from a child into a man, a husband, and a father. I love my mom and just miss her dearly. And then I wrote some notes while you all were talking. So a couple of you have mentioned that she pulled you aside and she said something nice, like what she told Brett, "You're going to be a great father." And those, I want to encourage you to do those things and to take that time and to say those things to people, because you never know what the person across from you is dealing with, or what they've gone through, or what they're thinking about. And even a little sense of encouragement like that can help you. And you hear these people. I mean, Greg, that she must have told you that 20 years ago or 19 years ago, right? And that's stuck in your head, right? And so I just want to encourage everyone here today to take that time to say those things to those people in your lives and make a difference. And then the last thing that I want to leave you with, there was several things, and I think Joel said we can't do most of them in polite conversation, but every time Barry and I were to say something stupid or Callah would mouth off as she does, she would just turn around and look at you, you be nice. You be nice.
You be nice.
I want to thank everyone for coming today, and I want to thank all the people that jumped on Zoom, and all my kids for helping set all this up and everything. And I, it's been 8 months, and it doesn't hurt any less. But you all being here today just warms my heart. So thank you very much.
She's with her stew baby now.
She is. And they're dancing a jig.
Yeah.
You remind me of the story. So every other. So I went in the Navy at 17. I was just a month over my 17th birthday. It was a very stupid thing to do, but it worked out. And I was in boot camp, and I was screwing around in the barracks. And there was a screw sticking out of the wall about an inch, and I ran by the screw and ripped a hole in my armpit. So I bled. It was nasty. Bled a lot. And this is boot camp. You don't ever. One thing about boot camp is you don't ever see an officer. If you see an officer, something really bad happens. So I made the mistake of writing in a letter to my mother that I ripped my arm and it was bleeding and I got stitched up. And I never told her that I was okay. So about 2 weeks later, I'm marching in circles because that's what you do in boot camp. And they pulled me out. And I was really scared because I didn't know what I did wrong. Because that's the biggest fear in boot camp is you did something wrong. They pulled me out and they took me to meet an officer. It was a lieutenant, which is pretty low, but he was still an officer, and I didn't know what an officer was. And he said, "Recruit, did you tell your mother there was something wrong with you?" I didn't know what was wrong with you. I was just really scared. And he said, "Did you tell your mother?" And I said, "Yes, I hear." And I think at that time it's probably still bleeding. And but I never told her I was okay. So she was on the phone. So she had called the Naval Training Center in San Diego and somehow got to the officer that was in charge of me. And I had to tell my mother I was fine. And I'll share one more. I went across the country with my ex in 1987 and got stuck in New Mexico, Klein's Corner, New Mexico, which is just a hole in the wall. And I didn't tell her where I was. I just said, "Hey, we're in Klein's Corner. We're broke down again." It was like the third or fourth breakdown I had that within a week. So I get a call in a hotel room in Klein's Corner. There was only 3 hotels, and she found me. And I don't know how it worked, but she called me, and she said, Uncle Mike, which is Marcia's husband, who's kind of sitting in the background there, was going to pick me up the next day. They were going to drag me. So they towed us back to Colorado Springs where we got the car fixed. But it was just awesome that my mom was able to, that's the person she was able to figure out where I was. And I think that curiosity and that kind of drive helped me in my career. I'm done now. I just want to share that because when you brought up the Navy, I really remember that. So it was funny.